You're listening to the Youth Critic Podcast on KHZ Network. Find us on Facebook at DecibelUNG Radio and find us on Twitter at DecibelUNG. If you like this episode, please leave a like and comment on our iTunes page at KHZ Network. And now for the podcast.
What a night nanny is. They take care of the baby at night so mom and dad can get some sleep.
I don't want a stranger in my house. It's like a Lifetime movie where the nanny tries to kill the family and the mom survives and she has to walk with a cane at the end.
Get over yourself.
Mom, what's wrong with your body?
Hello everyone, welcome to the Youth Critic Reacts. I am your host, Cale Smith, and today we're going to be talking about my day 3 at the Atlanta Film Festival. For those who don't know, I've been covering the 42nd Annual Atlanta Film Festival all week, and I've primarily been only covering the opening weekend, as I've only been able to go just for the first weekend. I'll be able to go this closing out weekend for movies like Hearts Beat Loud and 8th Grade and Won't You Be My Neighbor. But other than that, this is after today and then a little bit next week. This will be the end of my coverage of the Atlanta Film Festival. So if you want more information on that, check out the Blind Spotting review. And also on the Blind Spotting review, I have some updates on the podcast itself. So please check that out. We got a lot going on. So on this day, so first I want to start with talking about one short in particular, Magic 85. It stars Charles Baker from Breaking Bad. And the reason why I want to talk about this short first is there was like a group of shorts that accompanied Magic 85. However, this one actually particularly stood out to me as like the short that really worked the most. Because I've remembered it and I've just kept thinking about it all week. And Magic 85 is about basically a hospice caretaker named Gabriel who basically helps people with AIDS, kind of like you would with hospice care, kind of take care of them till they pass away. And that's really what the short is. It's only about 10 minutes long at most, but it's still an incredibly powerful short. Charles Baker gives a really good performance, and the cinematography through the flashbacks and just in general, it was incredible. And oddly enough, this was a student film from the American Film Institute that got in. It was written and directed by Amika Critic and Greg Wayne, and directed by Critic. And I thought overall this was an incredible short to watch. And I know shorts are a lot harder to find because they're still going through the festival circuit, and they just take a while before they get on Vimeo or YouTube. Or on someone else's demo reel. However, if you ever come across this short, Magic 85 is Charles Baker. If you come across it, it's fantastic. It was a really emotionally powerful short. I just really enjoyed it. Really found it interesting, and Charles Baker just gives a really good performance in it. So the next film I got to see, and really the first feature I got to see at the Atlanta Film Festival on day 3 on Sunday was Abu, or in translation, Father. And this is about a about Ashad Khan's experience of basically his own gay experience, and also his story of him trying to find peace with his father. And this is such an incredible story because he tells the story through, home videos of his own family. He doesn't, he rarely shows up in the documentary at all. He shows it through home videos or cartoons, and through different types of style of filmmaking, and to basically recreate to recreate his own childhood, and put it in not only his own childhood, but his very his adult hood and his, life and his experiences. But really the subject of the film itself is about his father and how he himself deals with, his father's disapproval of his sexuality, and how his father and Ashad have eventually come to terms with who they are and what their being is, and basically what their basically how to basically how to accept each other for who they are, because also Ashad has his own problems with his father outside of not being 100% accepted for who he is. He has his own issues with his own father, and it's a really touching documentary. It doesn't quite say when it'll be out, but I highly recommend it. I thought it was really good, very short, quick documentary about the experience of a gay person from Pakistan who is Pakistani that immigrated to Canada, and in that whole experience, especially after 9/11, even though he wasn't even though he wasn't technically American, he still, it shows how 9/11 affected the culture, infected the mood towards Middle Eastern people afterwards. So it's a really good documentary. I found it incredibly enjoyable, and I thought Ashad Khan's journey of self-acceptance and accepting his own father was very touching. I highly recommend it, and just worthy of seeing. And the next movie I got to see right after Abu is Mermaids. This is the documentary about the different kinds of women and even men that were inspired by tales of mermaids and tales of no pun intended, and wanting to be a mermaid as much as they could, and this is basically the story of the culture of mermaids, and you are in the lives of all these people and all their struggles, and just a really well done documentary. Very very good. Ali Weinstein directed this one, and she really does capture the kind of the slice of life moments for all the mermaids, and doesn't paint them in a way that's discriminatory or weird. It's all about the acceptance of these people in this this kind of culture that is in community that's surrounded by mermaids of all over the country. There's mermaids in California, there's mermaids in Florida, there's mermaids even in the New York coast or East Coast, and it's just a great documentary about that, and really interesting. If you're wanting to learn more about the culture of mermaids, and these are not real mermaids, I know, but it's interesting slice of life documentary about the culture of mermaids. Very interesting and worth checking out. Now on to the final movie I saw on Sunday, and the one you're probably wondering the most of what I've thought of, Tully. So, for those who don't know, this is the third collaboration between Jason Reitman and Diablo Cody, and the second collaboration that Reitman and Cody have worked with on Charlize Theron. And to give context to the story, this is a movie about Marlo and her struggle as a mother, and essentially learning how to be a mother in a world where she has, a daughter that's not that confident, a son who is not really who's not autistic, but they don't really quite know what he is, what's wrong with him in particular. He's just atypical. He's just displaying atypical abnormal behavior. And it's about the stress of all that, and then finally coming to the terms of asking for help in the form of a night nanny, Tully, played by Mackenzie Davis. And that's basically the story that's being touted around in the trailer, and that is the story of the movie. Is, Tully comes in, helps Marlo at night, and then allows him to sleep. However, without giving a lot away, the movie isn't an indictment or like the slice of life movie about motherhood that it wants you to be. This is a more movie about Marlo, and this is in her journey to not accepting responsibility, but to in her journey of how to learn to be a better mother, and also for her husband, Drew, to learn how to be a better husband himself. And that's really what the story is about. So it's hard to not give away because the movie is because the marketing campaign for this movie, they're doing a really good job of not telling you exactly what the movie is, but on one hand, I also think they're kind of, setting it up for failure, because it's not this portrait that the marketing says it is. So it's interesting that it isn't this portrait, but it's interesting that it's something else, and it's just an interesting film to watch. And but all I can say basic wise, and we will talk about Tully more in a couple weeks when it comes out on May 4th. Hey, I can actually talk about a movie's release date. I can say about Tully is it's another masterstroke film from Jason Reitman. Jason Reitman's kind of been, in a roller coaster kind of situation where the quality of his work kind of went down after Up in the Air, and then I thought it picked up a little bit with Men, Women, and Children, but a lot of people disagreed with me on that. However, I really liked this movie. I thought it was a masterstroke, and I really liked how the movie worked in the anxiety of motherhood, and and worked in and channeled. And I loved how Charlize Theron channeled Marlo as a character, and I really thought she gave a very committed, very strong performance in the movie, as well as everyone else. Everyone gave a really good performance. But I have to talk about Mackenzie Davis, because she really does stand out. She's funny. She hits, the dramatic beats when it's necessary. And she is the star of the movie. Charlize Theron is great, and she does wonders with Marlo. However, Mackenzie Davis's portrayal of Davis, it's a performance where she has to be where she has to be subtle, but not alienate everyone in the audience, because on one hand, having a night nanny just come in, the idea of this woman, the stranger, coming into the house and basically taking care of everything and taking the burden off of, Marlo, and it being anxiety, anxiety, because, Marlo does make the joke at the beginning of the movie of, how, like, if she allows someone in, it'll basically, be, that person will just turn into a psychopath and kill everyone, and she'll be the woman at the end of the movie with a cane, and she makes a great joke about that, but still, it's it's a great, but no, Mackenzie Davis, you just feel warm, you feel comfortable after a while, and you never or in my experience, I just never felt like anyone was in danger at all. Even though I was waiting, like everyone else, for the shoe to drop, because of course everything's too perfect. And of course, when the shoe does drop, there is an interesting twist to it all that, that I think really works. And I think it really does help the movie give its defining edge. And it's something people will talk about for sure for years to come. So with that said, I give Tully a recommendation. And actually, I recommend all the stuff I talked about on this episode. I thought everything so far at the Atlanta Film Festival has been really good and worth checking out. Like, I have not seen a movie yet at the Atlanta Film Festival that I thought was not worthy of being seen eventually down the road, especially, or not, keeping up with. And that's really the goal with the Atlanta Film Festival, because I want people to see the good movies and find them afterwards, but sometimes it's hard because they don't have a release date yet, and sometimes they don't show up on iTunes or wherever until like a year later, or maybe even a month later, which in that case it would be good, but sometimes it's the former. But yeah, it's I've really loved the Atlanta Film Festival's programming so far. And I hope everything went well for the rest of the week, because I've not been to the conferences. I did not get to see a lot of the other movies that showed midweek. And I just hope for the best. I thought this was an incredible festival this year. I wish I could have done more, but I am literally 2 weeks away from today from graduating college. So, of course, that's taking precedence in my life. And of course, the year they finally have incredible content. They do it like 2 to 3 weeks before I graduate. So with that, thanks everyone for listening. You can find me on Twitter at MovieKale. You can also follow the channel that distributes this podcast at KHZ Network, and you can follow the podcast itself for updates and news on the podcast, what we're going to be talking about next week, all that stuff. You can find out all that stuff at the Youth Critic. Thanks everyone. We'll be back with you next week.